Hello and welcome to Diary of a Reds Fan. I'm Carl Blalock, the host of this podcast. You might have seen me on either TikTok or Instagram, pretty much ranting about the Reds, it seems like, every single day on there. I've been doing daily Reds Reacts videos on there on Instagram for the entire season. We moved over to TikTok for about the last week or so, but it's been a ton of fun doing that. And I want to gather all of my thoughts, once we've gotten to this quarter season mark, gather all of my thoughts into just one cohesive podcast. Because there's been a lot to look at right now if you're a Reds fan. I've been a Reds fan my entire life. My dad, way back in the day, grew up in Dayton in the 70s. So he was a huge part of that big red machine. He'd always go to games with my grandpa. And that's something that kind of just rubbed off onto me. I mean, I've been watching Reds games since I can remember, really. I mean, every single Sunday, we'd go out to my grandma's house, we'd have a little meal, and we'd flip on the Reds game and the NASCAR race. Those were just the things that we did. And, obviously the Reds have stuck with me. And someday, if we ever make the postseason again and get some home playoff games, I'll go with my dad to them. But, you know what? Hopefully he's alive by the time that happens, because right now I'm not liking the chances of that. And you look at this season, and entering the season, this was the year to where you really thought, all right, the Reds are finally going to do it this year. This is the year that we've been working towards. You look at 2023, we were close. We were very close to the playoffs that year, but this was the year that we were working on. We were ahead of schedule. Last year, we took a step back, but this year was supposed to be the year that we were supposed to be World Series contenders. And unfortunately, we're not anywhere close to that. We're fringe playoff contenders, in my opinion, right now. We're not a good baseball team, and there's a lot of reasons why. But going throughout the season, it's been a challenge. It's really been a challenge. Early part of the season, obviously you have opening day and the blown save there. That just, it wasn't it. Ian Jabot was not the guy. What? He's not even on the roster. Is he even on Louisville anymore? I mean, he's gone. He's absolutely gone. And that was a guy we had close opening day. Oy. Not exactly the start you wanted, but it looked a lot better, and then the next week you have that run of 1-0 losses that drove me crazy. And I think it drove a lot of Reds fans crazy. And since then, we've kind of just been in this balance of we can hit for one day and then we don't hit for the next three. And so that's just unacceptable. And I think that the vibes within the fan base are very low because of that. Now, the good thing is the entire NL Central is just horrid. It's not a good division this year. And so if you could sneak into the playoffs, that can get you something. And we've seen it over the last few years, especially, you look at the Phillies and the Padres in 2023, the Tigers last year in 2024. That was 2022 with the Phillies and the Padres. But all you have to do is get there. If you get to the playoffs, you have a chance with this new format, and that's all the Reds need to do. And right now it looks like a big challenge, but if you can get there, you can make something happen. And hopefully the Reds will be able to do that. But the vibes have not been good to start this season. But we'll see. We'll see if they can change. The high points of the season so far this year have been those big run games. When this offense clicks, it clicks. And we've seen some really big scoring games. Started, obviously, with that 13-run game the first Monday of the season against Texas. I was at that game, and it was beautiful. You had Ellie almost hit for the cycle and hitting 2 home runs. It was beautiful. I mean, that was probably the best we've looked all season in that game. We also saw the Orioles game was another one, Easter Sunday, where we put up 24 runs. Austin Wynns had the game of his life. Another great game. And even you look at, what we were able to do on this past Saturday, at the time of recording, Mother's Day weekend. Look at what we did with the Astros. We scored 10 runs in an inning. That was incredible. Now, albeit that one, and we'll come back to this in a little bit, but that one was just because Lance McCullers is not a professional league pitcher at the moment. He's coming back from injury, and, he's not, I'm sure he looked fine in Double and Triple A, and they wanted him up there. I think the Astros have had a lot of injuries this year, and so they're kind of trying to find that. They're really trying to find that rotation, and they were hoping McCullers would be able to come back. And I don't know if they necessarily rushed him, but those were non-competitive pitches. He was not good, and we knocked him out after not even through the first inning. So, but we score a bunch then. So that has been a positive, although we'll circle back to why that's also been a negative in a little bit. Another positive has been Santiago Espinal and also Jose Trevino. I don't think if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that those two would have been our best hitters, I would have believed you. Espinal has always been underrated to me. He's always been a guy that, when you see him in the lineup, he produces. Kind of like, not necessarily like Scooter Gennett, who is one of my favorite Reds of all time, but a little bit similar to that. If you remember Scooter back in the 2017 season, he was kind of stuck behind Jose Peraza at shortstop, but he kind of worked his way into the lineup because every time you gave him a chance to hit, he produced. I mean, you look at the 4 home run game, obviously, for Scooter, but he always was able to produce whenever he got a spot in the lineup, and to the point to where you had to start putting him in the starting lineup. And I think that's what you're seeing with the Santino Espinal as well, or Santiago Espinal. I don't know why I keep doing that. But Santiago Espinal, I mean, he's every time that he gets in the lineup, he produces. I mean, he's the Reds' best qualified hitter right now. He's got a better, he's just looked incredible. He's looked like a really good player, and that's been really helpful as we navigate a few of these injuries, to have kind of that utility man that can step in and play anywhere around the infield like he can, and he has been incredible. You look at Austin Wynns and Jose Trevino, been one of the better batteries, and that's not even talking about Tyler Stevenson, who's looked okay as well. But I mean, Trevino, I was kind of a little bit of a head scratcher when I saw we picked up Trevino. I didn't like trading Fernando Cruz. I felt like we needed more bullpen depth, and I think that we definitely could use a Fernando Cruz in the bullpen, but Trevino has, pulled his weight. You can't be too angry about that trade because Trevino has been, incredible for the Reds. Right now he's leading the team in batting average. He has a higher OPS than, he has a higher slugging percentage than Elly De La Cruz. If you would have told me that at the beginning of the year, I don't think I would have believed it, and there's reasons for that we'll get to in a little bit, but Trevino has been incredible when you look at how he's been able to not only offensively with the bat, but also defensively. Part of the reason why this starting rotation has been as good as what it has been, I think, is because of Trevino. Trevino, because in New York, he was always considered more of a defensive catcher. He wasn't really one of those offensive catchers that would really, show off the bat very much, and he's done a great job in a hitter's park at Great American Ballpark, but he was more of a defensive catcher, and you're really seeing that because, you look compared to when Tyler Stevenson was, catching behind the dish for a few of these games the last few weeks. Compared to Trevino, Trevino calls the games a lot better, and you can see that helps the pitchers a lot. And you're seeing the pitchers reap the success. I mean, you look at the fielding independent. I did look at that, and that was one thing that worried me when I looked at the starting pitching is, the fielding independent is a little bit high. A lot of home runs, a lot of walks, that sort of thing. But, they've done really well outside of that. I mean, Lodolo's had a few bad games, but Hunter Green has looked incredible. Obviously, he's hurt now, and that's something that you kind of are a little bit worried about. Hopefully, it's going to be a quick stint, but Hunter Green, when he's been actions, looked really good. Nick Lodolo's looked very solid, and especially with a lot of these games, these pitchers have been asked to do pretty much the impossible. With how little the Reds have scored this year. So, they've done a good job of keeping us in these games. I think there's been 22 games this year where the Reds have been held under 3 runs. And the fact that, there's been 22 of those games and the Reds right now are only like 2 or 3 games. I think they're 3 games below 500 right now. We'll take that. We will absolutely take that. To have that be this poor on offense and still be somewhat in the hunt and not down with the Rockies and the White Sox right now. Brady Singer has been another one, and I think that's one of the big things is how good some of these additions that the Reds have made have impacted. You look at Brady Singer, obviously. He's been a very good addition. He's been very solid in this rotation. Jose Trevino, we've already talked about Trevino, his importance to this team. Gavin Lux has had some pretty quality at-bats. A very good, he's kind of turned into a little bit of a platoon hitter, when we're, have the proper outfield depth. But he's been very good. Austin Hayes has been, probably one of the better hitters on this team, and you could see a difference when Hayes got back to the lineup, how much better this team hit. And you're seeing it again to where he's been out of the lineup with, a hamstring injury. The team hasn't hit as well since. We've hit another slump. So I think that's something where Austin Hayes' importance to this team cannot be understated. He's been very good. Emilio Pagan, I didn't expect him to be the contributor that he has been. I really, I said it in my first video, at least, I was glad we did have Emilio Pagan closing on opening day, and that's been a mistake. He's been very solid. I believe he's 9 for 11. I don't think he got a save opportunity, because it was a 5-run game on Saturday. So 9 for 11 on save opportunities, only blown 2 saves. You'll take that. That's a very solid, out of the reliever thing, especially considering the fact that this team's kind of nomadic without a closer this year. Alexis Diaz isn't the same right now. He's trying to figure it out in AAA, but something is wrong with him. And outside of that, the only person you really think that is capable of closing is Tony Santillan, who's looked incredible. And we've seen some good outings also from Graham Ashcraft, although he's starting to get figured out in the bullpen. He's going to have to change little things. But Graham Ashcraft has looked solid in the bullpen. We're seeing a lot of these players that, used to be starters and are getting shortened down into relievers, but you can still use them for several innings. And I think that's something that is very nice, especially early in the season. Ashcraft was perfect because, you get, when we were still trying to figure out the bullpen, it was perfect for Ashcraft. You could just stick him in there for 2-3 innings. Perfect. And then you can get into the meat of the order, or, the meat of the bullpen with Santillan and Pagan later in the game. I think that's one thing. Obviously, the big addition coming into this year was Terry Francona. You bring in a World Series manager. You look and see what he did. You look and see what he did in Boston. Won 2 World Series. You look and see what he did when he was with Cleveland, and especially later in that tenure when he was doing less with more. And so you expected, I think we kind of overhyped it a little bit because you saw him do less with more with the Guardians to where, okay, maybe he can do less with more here. Because let's be honest, the front office deserves a little bit of grief for this. They did a decent job with the bullpen, but the outfield depth was shambolic. And I get that we've had a lot of injuries, but there's no way that Blake Dunn should be starting on the baseball team and getting at-bats regularly. And same thing with Jacob Hurtubise. I'm glad that we finally brought them down. We got Will Benson back up. We got Rhys Hines back up. And Hines has been incredible. But I don't, I feel like we didn't have the outfield depth that we really needed, and especially when we had so many injuries in the outfield with, obviously Austin Hayes was hurt for a while. That's something to where we were missing it. We were definitely missing that depth, and that's something on the front office, absolutely. But I think one of the things with Terry Francona is he needed a lot of time to figure out how to manage this team. He was really, he was pretty well endowed when he was at Cleveland with the bullpen guys that they have, and I think that's part of the reason why we had that opening day meltdown. Is in Cleveland, I mean, he had a bullpen in the last few years to where you could really throw anybody out there and it'd be fine. I mean, heck, I mean, you look at, that's what won him games back in 2016, 2017, was he had all of these, he had the Andrew Millers, and, you had Emmanuel Clase the more you got closer to, present day. And that's what won him those games. And he could have, a deep bullpen where he could throw anybody out there. That's not the way the Reds work. We don't grow pitchers on trees like what they do in Cleveland. Cleveland's pitching staff has been incredible. You look at all the players that have been able to come out of Cleveland's farm system and make impacts, whether it's in the bullpen or starting pitchers. I mean, they grow them on trees. You look at how good that pitching staff has been in Cleveland. That's not the way that it is in Cincinnati. And I think that he kind of got caught up by that. You saw that in the first few weeks. But once he got adjusted, I feel like there are some things that are good. You do see accountability. You see accountability with the team. I think it started in spring training. Stuart Fairchild, he didn't go full bore. He kind of jogged to first base, did make a few plays in some of the spring games. We DFA'd him, ended up trading him to Atlanta. So that, that's accountability. There's definitely accountability, and that set a tone to the team. And you've seen it to where, like in the past, we'd have Alexis Diaz would still be on the team if that was a David Bell decision. David Bell was a player's manager, but that also meant that he was too much of a player's manager. And so, he would give way too many opportunities, and he kind of prioritized, I think, the clubhouse and how the clubhouse felt about things over what was actually better for the team. I'm not saying that, that's not needed to be taken into account, and I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I do think that is something that needs to be worked on just a little bit. That was something that was needed in this clubhouse, was accountability, and you are seeing it at the managerial level. But there's still a lot of things. For Tito, I know he's coming out of retirement, but there seems so many times to where he's just kind of like really laissez-faire on things. Even, like if you mess up, you mess up and you know about it. But there's a lot of things, there's been a lot of just general defensive mistakes that we've seen from the Reds, which we haven't seen. And I don't know what the issue is with that, but, there's just the vibes are off on this team. And I don't know if it's Tito. I don't know what it is, but I definitely can see where Tito, he's very laissez-faire, and he doesn't fight for his players. That's one thing with David Bell, like, anytime there was an iffy call, there's a reason why he was thrown out so much over the last few years. There really was. And so I don't know. I think that I'd like to see Tito fight a bit more. And he did. In the Atlanta series, obviously, there was a few bad calls. You had that Tyler Callahan awful play. That was a horrible play. And watching it live was sickening. He didn't fight there, and I think that's something where he should have fought a little bit more, and he did later in the series when Blake Dunn got thrown out and there was an interference call at second base where the second baseman was basically kneeling in front of the bag. He fought there. He fought a little bit there, but that's the most fight that we've seen out of Tito, and I get he's coming out of retirement. I get that he has health issues and he probably can't get the blood pressure up a ton, but I want to see a little bit more fight. Pick your moments and get angry. I would wish to see, Francona do that, but I don't know. There's some things, and I think, and one of the biggest issues I see with this team is when there was the most success back in June of 2023, the team was having fun. Like, you could see the team was having fun. They were goofing off, but they were, they were winning. They were putting the belt. They were getting the belt out and bringing the belt, winning the games, and you're not seeing that. You're really not seeing that, and I don't know if it's something with the team. I don't know if is it an Ellie problem? There's definitely a lack of player leadership in the locker room. And Austin Hayes, I think, Austin Hayes or like Jose Trevino are probably the closest we have right now to like an actual like clubhouse leader. But this team is sorely missing a Jonathan India or a Joey Votto. A Joey Votto type would do incredible here. Because I think that you need to have that player-based leadership. And you don't have that elder statesman right now. The elder statesman is supposed to be Heimer Candelario, and he's been horrid. He has not been a good baseball player. He's the second coming of Mike Moustakas at third base. There's he's on the IL right now, and it's kind of one of those, we don't want to move you down to AAA because you probably don't have the options, but you aren't good enough for the roster right now. You've got like a little bit of a soft tissue injury. Figure it out in the rehab, and actually hit, because he looked decent in the first week, and then he's just looked terrible since. But it's something. And really, that's the entire offense. I mean, you look at Matt McLain is in a huge slump, which Matt McLain is, out of all the issues that we've seen with the hitting, I think Matt McLain, as much as it's sad to see him struggle, it's the one that makes the most sense. The guy didn't play, he faced for half a year, really, maybe a little bit over half a year. I think he was there for most of that. I mean, from May of 2023 onward, he was facing major league pitchers, and then he missed an entire year. He only faced major league pitchers for like four months. It's understandable that when he comes back, he's going to have a little bit of growing pains. That, like, Matt McLain is probably the person that's having the slump that I'm least worried about. But when you look at everybody else in the lineup, Elly De La Cruz has been turned into a singles hitter. They're turning Elly De La Cruz into Billy Hamilton. How? I know how. It's Chris Valanca. There's a reason why Guardians fans were cheering, absolutely cheering, throwing a parade even, when Valanca left. And it's easy to see why. The man could turn prime Barry Bonds into Javi Baez. He really could. He could turn him into Tigers Javi Baez. He can't do anything. And you're seeing the issues that this team has had. They're not hitting ground balls, especially Elly. He's not hitting ground balls. You're not seeing power stats. Elly barely has any home runs. He hit his first home run in like 2 weeks on Saturday, and that was just because McCullers was serving up meatballs on uncompetitive pitches. Like, you can't have an Elly De La Cruz type talent, the most electric prospect the Reds have ever had. You can't have him out there and playing like this. This is absolutely terrible. And we've seen it in the defensive side. We've seen it, hitting-wise as well. And it's one of the big things where I don't know why the vibes are off in the clubhouse. I don't know if it's Tito ruling with an iron fist. I don't know if maybe it's something with Elly. I don't know if it's just because they're not good right now, but the vibes are off in this clubhouse. We talked about it. When this team is good, they're having fun. There's been no fun on this team. There was no fun last year on this team, and there's no fun this year on this team. There's none. The vibes are absolutely sapped, and I don't understand why. I don't think it's because of the leadership, but look, you had the Viking helmet last year. I don't even know if they do the money gun anymore. They had the money gun, and I haven't seen them do the money gun in like a while. They probably did it on Saturday, but they didn't show it. It's just you can't have that. And Chris Valanca, I think, is the easiest person to put this on, because all these hitters were doing fine before he was there, and I think that we need to find somebody else. Maybe that's where Joey Votto fits. Votto was a great hitter. I would love to see Joey Votto come back. Hopefully we didn't burn everything, because I was really hoping we didn't burn everything when we forced him out at the end of 2023, but I want to see that man back. I want to see that man back in the Reds dugout. He needs to be in the clubhouse. He has to be. That is the heart and soul of this team, it seems like, and it's been missing since 2024. And there's got to be something there. I really think there's got to be something there. There's got to be something there, and there's got to be a leadership, because the distinct lack of leadership is apparent in one of the wildest stats that I think I've ever seen about a baseball team. And this is, I mean, I've seen it a few times, but this is from Reds Daily 4. Actually, he got it from Reds fan Brandon. The last time the Reds have lost a series opening game and gone on to win the series was June 26th through 28th in 2023. That's almost 2 years ago, the last time that the Reds lost the opening game of a series and won and won the series. You know, they don't bounce back. And like I talked about it, if you were able to watch yesterday's video, and you know, if you want to watch them, you know, TikTok, Blalock Media, and on Instagram also at Blalock Media. But you know, you have these players that, you know, they aren't mentally tough. And when you look at yesterday, for example, I talked about it. You know, Chase Petty, he's not good. He might be one of those guys that needs to go to the bullpen. He's just not. I don't know. Maybe he'll figure it out the next time he comes up. But right now, he's not a major league pitcher. At least not a starter. And you know that's been very apparent through his first few starts. He did better yesterday, but I mean, better is not. I mean, he gave up 9 runs his first one. He only gave up like 4, I think, earned runs this one, but 6 walks? No. We weren't going to win that game anyways. But you look at the fact, you know, we lost game 1 of the series. We weren't going to win that game, and it's been that way the entire year. You know that you're not going to win the game because, you know, we don't win those games. It's kind of been like the Bengals in like big primetime games. You know, they don't win those games. And again, the Reds don't win those games, and you know they lose that game again, and you know it's pitiful. It's truly pitiful when you're sitting there and like, I knew we weren't even going to score a run. I should have put my money where my mouth is, truthfully, with that, because we weren't going to score a run. We scored more than 10 runs the game before. We lost game 1 of the series. We were never winning that game, even if Chase Petty didn't start. We could have started Nolan Ryan, prime Nolan Ryan, and we still wouldn't have won that game. Might have gone to extras, but we wouldn't have won that game. We would have lost 1-0 in like 12 innings. I don't know. You know, and I don't know where you go from here, truthfully. I mean, this is the 12th straight year that the Reds have had a losing mark through 40 games. 12 straight seasons. And that's just unacceptable. And there's just some unacceptable things. We're not playing well in getaway games. You know, we have rubber matches, and how many rubber matches this year have we just, you know, we haven't shown up. There was a stat where I think that like since the middle point, I think it was like June 2024 in rubber matches, we were like 3, and I think now we would be 3-21 now. You can't have that. There's not fight in this team. Again, like we've talked about it, there's no fight in this team. There's still mistakes. And the sad thing is the fact that we're going to get roped back into this because we've talked about it. The division is so bad. The division is right there for the taking. We can take it still. We could still make the playoffs. We're only like 5 games back in May. Like, that is entirely doable. And what'll probably happen is we'll be there, we'll be close, and, you know, we'll lose some dumb games to the Cubs, but we'll still be like 3 games back heading into September, and then we'll kind of half blow it, half not, and somehow the Cardinals will end up winning the division, because why not? But I don't know. It's hard to be a Reds fan right now. And part of the reason why the vibes are so low in the fan base is because this was the year that we were building up to. And truthfully, like 25 and 26 are going to be the years that we have to do something this year and next year, because Ellie's only in contract through 2027. And the CBA expires in 2027. And there's been a lot of, I am expecting, I'm truthfully expecting a long work stoppage in 2027. It's possible. I don't even know if we play baseball in 2027 with the CBA negotiations. And so, realistically, you have this year and next year with Elly De La Cruz on your roster to make noise in the postseason. And right now, that's just not happening. It's just not. And I mean, I'll be honest, over the last week, I've really started checking out of a lot of these games. I mean, because like even when we scored 10 runs, we were worried about blowing the lead. It's not good for my mental health. It's not good for anybody's mental health. They're not a fun team to watch. It's not a team right now that you want to sit there and watch every single day. And it's a challenge. It truly is a challenge. And I don't know. I don't know how the team reacts, because like I don't see the fight in the team, and sometimes that's hard for me to fight through watching those games. One of the games that really sits to me is the rubber match against the Seattle Mariners a few weeks ago, where it was a getaway day and we committed like 4 errors. It was unacceptable. It was the most unacceptable game of baseball I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, we didn't show up. And we were still on the game because we had some great pitching that day. I don't remember who was on the mound, but you got to get this. You got to get it figured out. You gotta have fight, and this team doesn't have fight right now, and that's why it's such a struggle to watch this team. I think that once you get later in the season, maybe things will change. But you know what? We're 42 games into the season, and a 7th of those games we've been shut out. No, a 6th. Sorry, a 6th. I can't do mental math. A 6th of the games we've been shut out. How in the world does that happen? How in the world do you get shut out in almost 20% of your games so far this season? And that's the thing, like, between all the issues we've seen in the clubhouse, the effort issues, the fight issues, the lack of leadership, this isn't a playoff team. And we'll get teased. We'll get teased come September, but this isn't a playoff team. And I don't know what changes you make. I think firing Chris Valanka would start. Maybe you can jumpstart the offense at least by firing him. But there are some big changes that need to be made, and I don't know if they get made. And I feel bad for Terry Francona, because he came out of retirement for this. He came out of retirement, and this is his reward. I guess there's a little bit of hope, maybe. Maybe we do something like what the Rangers, because remember, Bruce Bochy came out of retirement for the Rangers in 2022, and they stunk. They stunk in 2022, but then they figured it out in 2023. Obviously won the World Series over Arizona. Maybe we can do that. I hope we can do that. Because, man, the fan base is hurting, and the fan base is apathetic. And when this is supposed to be a World Series window, and the team is this apathetic, it doesn't work. But anyways, make sure to follow me. It is on Instagram, Blalock Media. Give that a follow and a like. Subscribe on here as well, whether you're listening on Spotify, whether you're watching on YouTube. And also make sure to watch on TikTok. It's Blalock.media on TikTok. But thanks for listening. We'll probably be back on here around the half-season mark, but until then, keep an eye on the TikTok and the Instagram for daily content.